Kelly Carrington. This is my greenhouse, and we're in Prospect, and we're going to talk about some gardening. Everybody calls it the office because I don't actually have an office. I don't even know how long I've been gardening, but hardcore probably for the last 13 years. Mainly it was to get some extra food, but also to show the kids like what it's like to take a seed and get something out of it and just spend time with them outside. When we first started, somebody had given me the square foot gardening book, and it fascinated me about, grow lots of stuff in a small space. Square boxes with netting, because everything here wants to eat what you grow. And then I was like, I need a greenhouse. Not necessarily for the actual greenhouse, but protect what I was planting. So we built a smaller greenhouse, and it was really great. It produced well, but it wasn't big enough. So then I acquired a few things. Like one of my friends had given me a steel frame that was from a shop that blew over in a storm. And so then I just started scavenging material for like a year. So I had an idea in my head of sort of what I wanted it to look like. It was like a baby barn style frame that was there, but I didn't want just plastic and frame. So everything is recycled material, except for the screws and the PVC piping that I use for venting in the bottom. This piece, it was in the garbage, and I liked just the way that it looked, and I needed to fill this space. And so I had cut it, and I had a friend of mine weld it up so it looks like a one-piece window. This is a patio door. Same with the other side. This is a vent for a floor that I picked out of the garbage because it was perfectly good and I needed more ventilation. As much as my wife doesn't like my scavenging ways, because I always bring stuff home, this was a 2-door set that was in the garbage, and she called me and she was like, there's doors up by the road. So I went and got them and cut the window out and cut that out for the door. The reason the greenhouse is oriented this way is because a lot of the wind comes from the ocean, which is that way, flying this way. So the shortest part of the greenhouse. And it's also a little bit low because we're kind of in a hollow. So most of the time when we have a storm come through, all I do is shut all the vents, close up the back end so that everything doesn't get blown over. If you notice any of these on the outside, they're around the entire perimeter of the greenhouse, and they're just PVC pipes, and they're very low. And so what I did was, in the greenhouse, in any of the raised beds, this PVC pipe goes about that level through the bed to the inside of the laneway in the greenhouse. It pulls in the cold air as the heat rises in the greenhouse, and it creates circulation so that I always have airflow, so I don't really have to deal with mold. I always get lots of airflow. Welcome to the office. I mean, this is the end of season, so it's not like super great, but we have lots of lavender still. Tomatoes are still in here. Pepper plants are still ripening up. You see lots of things hanging, ropes, hoses, because those are the things I usually use when things get super overgrown to just keep the aisles clear. I got these windows from a big box store in town. They were tearing down their greenhouse because they were just smashing them out. So I got these. This is for the replacement of this side of the greenhouse roof. I did the other side 2 years ago, but that'll be a project for later. Side ventilation, I found this old wooden room separator, and I just cut it so there's one there and one on the other side. And this is the plug for that, so in the wintertime I can just close it right up. This is all tomato with a few hot peppers. These are Carolina Reapers. So I have string, and on top I have rope or wire or dowel or these bamboo stakes. And when I plant my tomato plants, I take 2 of these strings from top to bottom, and I put them in the bottom of the hole. And then as the tomato grows, I try to weave it in so that it stays supported. Because we live in Prospect, you put a shovel in the ground, you get rocks. Except for right here where the pit is. Because when we built the house, I got the contractors to bury all of the grubbings from the house construction here. So underneath the pit, this is why it's so flat, there's literally 15 feet of rotting organic material. This is the net room. This was the newer addition than the actual greenhouse. I built this after we built the vineyard because you have to keep the animals out. Because if you're growing stuff they want to eat, they're going to eat it. Nature here, it's not harsh, but like Mother Nature's not messing around. So you have to kind of work within the guardrails that she allows you. Like for instance, the vineyard, I had a couple of really good years. I'm like trying to get production up. Like one year I made 40 bottles of jelly. It was like awesome. I was like, this is so good. Well, last year I had a great crop. Fiona came, blew all the grapes off because they weren't quite ready, and it came. And then this year, because the weather's been so weird, I had powdery mildew on the vineyard, which I've never had before. It was like a rainforest here. It was so humid for so long. So grape production was down a little bit, and then we had the storm. I mean, I still have some grapes, but they're not ripe, and the temperature we have right now is not going to facilitate further ripening. Yeah, the sugar content isn't really high enough, but you want to try one? They're good, but they're not like sweet as you want them. The longer they are in the season, the sweeter they get. And sometimes if you get them right after just a little bit of a frost, they're like bang on. It's not great that I don't have any grapes, but it's great that I know how to fix it because I've been doing this for a while. So we'll just figure it out for next year. This is where the vineyard is, and that was the only thing that was in here. But then over the years, I've just built up more planting space as we go. Here is where the garlic bed starts. The garlic basically is planted somewhere between Halloween and November 11th is when I try to get it in the ground for the spring. I try not to plant anything smaller than my thumb and good flavor. I parsed it down to get the biggest ones. Ones I have in the basin right now I think are really good. They taste fantastic, the size is good, and you also get the scapes. That is sheep's wool, which is what I use for mulch. One of my clients, she's a bit of a sheep farmer. As a weed barrier, I find it maintains the moisture in the soil, and it's sheep's wool. So it's all natural, it's great. And this is the back of the greenhouse. This catches all the water off of one side of the greenhouse, and then once this fills up, overflows into another bin that's in the actual greenhouse. So I have water in the greenhouse, but I also have water out here. I don't tend to water everything out here because we get enough rain, but then if it's really dry, I have irrigation tubes for the vineyard that I can just hook up to this. And then if I need to spot water any of the things that are out here, I can just use this bin instead of having to go around the other side. We were outside, and that was the water bin that's outside, and it's plumbed, which is just a couple hoses in here, and it's all gravity fed into this one. And then once this one gets filled, I have this little hose and it goes into this one, and then I usually will hand water the greenhouse. There is hose run everywhere in here, but I haven't got enough slope quite yet for it to go. It will water, but it won't water fully, so I usually end up hand watering most everything. But I find that hand watering allows you to actually see what's going on, because it's important if you get disease or whatever, so you can actually see it up front. So I don't mind hand watering, it just takes the time. In the back is where all the peppers are grown. I don't rotate. The only time I ever did rotate is I had planted some eggplant one year back here, and it got a fungus, and I couldn't plant anything else, I think nightshade there, because it would carry the fungus in the soil. But no, everything goes in the same place every year. And tomatoes are always here because it's the highest spot in the greenhouse. Peppers are always in the back here because they get the most heat. And then on the other side of the greenhouse is where some of the things that don't require as much sun tend to go, because where the sun does come up this way, that side of the greenhouse tends to be shadier. So everything goes over there. This is the hot side, that's the shady side, because the tomatoes and peppers are so high. Everything that doesn't really, like potatoes, are over there. I don't find they need that much sun. Everything else is over there. So everything gets planted basically in the same place. In the bottom of these beds is about, I'd say, that much of rotting wood when I first started, just old wood from the property. And then there's like 2 feet of horse manure, composted, and then compost on top. And so at the end of each season, compost just gets put on top of all the beds, sheep's wool, and then everything gets put to bed for the winter time. And then it gets watered before, and then in the spring, watered again, and then we start all over again. But these are just basically This is a door. This is an old door. That's why it's all bubbly. When I was outside talking about the venting, so this is the PVC pipe that comes through that draws in as the heat rises in here, draws in the cool air to keep circulation, and then in the wintertime, I just cover it. In the wintertime, I do bury some of our compost from the house in the beds as well, so that in the spring when things start to thaw out, the worms and everything have something to eat. 9 years ago, I bought a pineapple at just a regular store. It wasn't even an organic one. Watching gardening videos, I saw somebody start a pineapple, so I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And I kept it alive in the house, and it's in the house still for 7 years before I got my first pineapple. And it was tiny, but I got one. After that first one, I get a pineapple roughly every 18 months, and I take the top of the fresh, proper pineapple and I start a new one. They come up here in the summer and then they go back in the house for the winter because it just gets too cold up here. Yeah, so I go pineapple and prospect. This is the gardening book. And this is where everything is basically documented of all the growing seasons. And in the gardening book, I have a blueprint of the square footage of what is planted so that I can keep track. I just write down everything that goes in, when I planted it, where I planted it, and when I pulled out all of the plants. So 2019, I pulled out in October 26th. And I also document how much compost I put in here, just so I get an idea of how much I'm using. So this is the compost pile. This is actually a lobster trap that I got from a friend of mine because the compost pile was fine for years. And then a bear came and was tearing it apart. So that's why there's, scrap pieces of wood with nails through them to deter the bear. But everything from the house compost, because we don't have municipal pickup all year round, just gets thrown in here. I turn it a couple times a year and that's it. And then every 2 years I get lots of really good compost. That's a Fresno. We are going to each have a piece of this on camera. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Nadia. I'm the person who's behind a permaculture conversation. I'm usually behind the camera and editing and putting together all these videos.
Now, how big of a slice do you want?
Just that's good.
Do you
That's
want to
perfect.
smell it first?
They smell. Oh, that smells really nice.
Cheers. We'll see how this goes.
Woo. Okay, they're hot.
That is hot. That is fucking hot. It's supposed to be a little hotter than a jalapeno, but that's definitely bringing some habanero heat. Look,
Wow.
I have goosebumps right now. Well, thank you for coming. You get to take that home with you.
Thank you.
That's really fucking hot.